Ever stop to think about how you actually learn something new? How your brain goes from, to, I've got this. Well, it's not some kind of magic. It's this incredible process where your experiences are literally rewiring your brain. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how it all works. I mean, think about it for a second. That little jingle your phone makes for a text? At one point, that was just noise. But now, you're probably reaching for your pocket without even thinking. Or what about your dog who can go from 0 to 100 just at the crinkle of a treat bag? Yeah, those aren't random reactions. They are 100% learned behaviors. And digging into how we learn them, that's what this is all about. Okay, so that leads us to the big question, right? What do we even mean by learning? From a scientific standpoint, it's actually way more specific than you might think. All right, here's the textbook definition. And there are two words here that are absolutely key. First, relatively permanent. This isn't something that's here one minute and gone the next. And second, it's produced by experience. So it's not just a passing mood, it's a genuine lasting shift in what you do or even what you could do, all because of something that happened to you. So it's super important to be clear about what learning isn't. That feeling of being totally drained after a long study session, that's not learning. That's just plain old fatigue. And what about getting used to the noisy traffic outside your window? That's a cool process called habituation, but it's not learning either. Real learning is the stuff that sticks. It's the change that's still there long after the fact. All right, let's dive into our first major building block of learning. It turns out a massive chunk of how we learn starts with something really simple. Just making connections. Connecting the dots between things that happen around us. And this brings us into the fascinating world of classical conditioning. The big name you gotta know here is Ivan Pavlov. He's the guy who figured out that our brains can learn to link two totally separate things, or stimuli, together. Basically, one thing starts to act like a signal that another thing is about to happen. He called it SS learning, for stimulus-stimulus. It really just shows how our brains are these amazing pattern-detecting machines. Okay, let's walk through his most famous experiment. You've probably heard of it. So step one, you've got food. A dog sees food, it naturally starts to salivate. No learning required, right? Then you've got a bell. You ring it. The dog's like, so what? Nothing happens. But here's where the magic happens. You start ringing the bell right before you give the dog the food. Over and over. Bell, then food. Bell, then food. Pretty soon, the dog's brain makes the connection. And eventually, you can just ring the bell and the dog starts salivating, even with no food in sight. Boom, a new behavior has been learned. And listen, this is so not just about dogs drooling. Think about the sound of a dentist's drill. The first time you heard it as a kid, it was probably just a weird buzzing sound. But after you've linked that sound with, discomfort in your mouth, well, now just hearing it might make your heart race and your palms get sweaty. That right there, that's classical conditioning in your own life. Okay, but learning isn't always this passive thing where stuff just happens to us. We're out there doing things. We're active. And it turns out the consequences of our actions are maybe the most powerful teachers of all. And this is where we get into operant conditioning. Now, the name to know for this one is B.F. Skinner. And his big idea was pretty simple but profound. Our voluntary actions, the things we choose to do, which he called operants, are basically shaped by what happens right after. If something good happens, we're more likely to do it again. If something bad happens, well, we learn to avoid it. It's all about cause and effect. So really, it all boils down to two big ideas, reinforcement and punishment. Super simple, right? Reinforcement is anything that makes you more likely to do something again, and punishment is anything that makes you less likely to do it. But, and this is a big but, it gets a little more nuanced than that. Getting this next part right is the key to everything from training your dog to building better habits for yourself. Okay, let's zoom in on reinforcement, because this is where almost everyone gets a little mixed up. Positive doesn't mean good. A negative doesn't mean bad. Think of them like math. Positive means you add something. So positive reinforcement is adding something nice, like getting a bonus for a job well done. Negative reinforcement means you subtract something. You're removing something annoying. The classic example, that awful beeping sound your car makes, you buckle your seatbelt to make the annoying sound go away. See? In both cases, the behavior, doing a good job or buckling up, is reinforced. It's more likely to happen again. All right, so we've got learning by association and we've got learning by consequences. But what about learning by just watching? Turns out, a huge amount of what we know, especially how to act around other people, comes from just observing. This is where psychologist Albert Bandura comes in. He called this process modeling, and it's a total game changer. His point was that we don't always have to learn things the hard way through direct experience. We can just watch somebody else, see what happens to them, and learn from their experience. I mean, talk about a learning shortcut. And his famous Bobo doll study revealed something really crucial. We don't just mindlessly copy everything we see. No way. We are way more likely to imitate an action if we see the other person get rewarded for it. And we're way less likely to copy them if we see them get punished. So we're learning not just from their actions, but from the consequences they face. And once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. I mean, this is literally how fashion trends go viral. It's how you learn to fix a leaky faucet from a YouTube tutorial. It's how little kids learn to say please and thank you from their parents. It's happening all the time, all around us. But wait, there's more. Learning isn't always about what's happening on the outside, the bells, the rewards, the punishments. Sometimes the really deep, profound learning happens entirely inside our own minds. This brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, cognitive learning. Yeah, this is where we go way beyond simple stimulus and response. We're talking about those incredible aha moments where a solution just clicks into place. And we're also talking about a quieter, more subtle kind of learning that can happen without any obvious reward at all. So for insight learning, the classic story comes from a researcher named Wolfgang Kohler. He put a chimpanzee in a room with some boxes and a banana hanging just out of reach. The chimp didn't just start randomly jumping around. Nope. It sat there, kind of looked things over, and then suddenly, like a light bulb went off, it stacked the boxes, climbed up, and grabbed the banana. The solution didn't come from trial and error. It came in a single flash of insight. Then there's this other cool idea called latent learning. Latent basically just means hidden. A guy named Edward Tolman had rats wander through a maze with no reward at the end. They didn't seem to be learning much. But the moment he put some food at the end, those rats zipped through the maze like pros. It proved they had been learning the layout the whole time, creating a mental cognitive map. They just didn't have a reason to show it until there was a reward. So let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways? Learning really comes down to these 4 amazing building blocks. You've got learning by association, like Pavlov's dogs. Learning by consequences, which is all about rewards and punishments. Learning by observation, or just watching others. And finally, learning through that inner mental click of insight. Together, these are the fundamental ways that every experience you have literally reshapes your brain. And that leaves us with one last question, really, for you. Now that you kind of get the playbook for how your own brain learns through association, consequences, watching others, and those aha moments, what are you going to do with it? What's the next skill you're going to choose to master?